common percentages of increase and decrease. First, let's look at 20 and $20 just to make it a little more, I should say, common for us. We want a 10% increase on that. Let's see, first, we'll describe 20 as 100%. To get 10%, we're going to move the decimal over one time or divide it by 10. That gives us 2. So 2 represents 10%, whereas 20 represents 100%. Now to increase it, we're going to add them. So 20 plus 2 gives us 22, which a 10%, starting off at 10% and starting at 100%, having a 10% increase means the final amount is actually 110%. So this is 20 with a 10% increase. Now, what about a 5% increase? Okay, once again, 20 represents 100%. 5%, we go back to 10%. If 2 is 10%, then 5% will be half of this. So again, 10% is 2, then 5% will be 1. Okay, so let's increase it by adding it. This is 21, and 21 represents 105%. Okay, over here. Once again, 20 represents 100% of the value. Okay, and to get 20%, we see that, and we want 20%. If 10% is 2, then 20% will be twice as much, which is 4. So this is going to be your 20% increase. So 20 plus 4 is 24, and 120% is the final result. This is your increase. This is your final amount, 120%. Okay, now let's do 25% increase. So 20 represents 100%, and we want to find out what 25% looks like. Well, if 20% is 4 and 5% is 1, when we put the 20% and the 5% together, we'll be putting the 4 and the 1 together, which makes 5. So 5 represents 25%. So let's increase it by 5, and it becomes 25, which is now 125% of the original. Okay. Now let's do decreases. On the decreases, we're going to start off with 60 instead. So now we're going to decrease these. So once again, 60 represents 100%. And I want to find out what is 10%. Well, if I divide this by 10 or move the decimal over, I'll get 6. So 6 represents 10%. We're going to decrease this by 6. So 60 minus 6 gives us 54. And 100 minus 10% tells us that this is 90% of the original. Okay, now let's do a 5% decrease. 60 represents 100%, and we want 5%. Okay, if 10% is 6, then 5% will be half of 6. So half of 6 will be 3. Okay. 10% is 6, so 5% will be 3. So let's decrease it by 3, and we'll get 57. And 57 represents 95% when we subtract these two. Okay, next, a 20% decrease. 60 represents 100% of the amount. Okay. And we want 20%. Okay. Here, 10% is 6. So 20% will be twice as much as 6. Twice as much as 6 will be 12. So we're going to have a decrease by 12. 60 decreased by 12 is 48. And 100% decreased by 20 means we have now 80% of the value. We went from 100% to 80%. Now, let's make a 25% decrease on 60. Again, 60 represents 100% of the original, and we want to decrease the value by 25%. Well, to get 25%, we look at the 20% and the 5% here. 20% is represented by 12, and 5% is represented by 3. So when we combine the 20% and the 5%, we'll get 25%. So 12 combined with 3 is 15. So 15 represents the 25%. Now, if I decrease 60 by 15, I get 45 and 100 of the original amount.